Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started now. Welcome to the Lawlytics Content Planning Clinic. This webinar is designed to give any attorney a foundation in how to create content for your website and your online presence. My name is Dan Jaffe. I'm an attorney, and I'm also the CEO and one of the two co-founders of Lawlytics. I practiced law for about 10 years or so before stumbling into tech full-time about 7 years ago. Started my first technology business, legal marketing technology business, while I was still practicing. That practice took off based, ironically, on content to the point where I had to make the decision, do I do that full-time or do I practice law full-time, because there weren't enough hours in the day to do both well. Eventually that first business, which was a legal directory, was acquired, and I founded Lawlytics, which is the dream legal marketing system and service that I wished I had had when I was practicing law. The core foundation of how we operate here at Lawlytics is based on content, and so I'm very excited to be sharing this information with you today. My co-presenter is Victoria Blute. She is our community manager, and she works to keep our Lawlytics community and our members informed of what's going on not only within the Lawlytics ecosystem, but in the larger macro system that surrounds Lawlytics, including the search engines, social media, and so forth. Today we've got this webinar broken into 3 different segments. Victoria is going to take the first segment. During that period, which will probably last between 20 and 30 minutes or so, she's going to lay a foundation about how important content is. It will be somewhat basic for those of you who have already gotten well into content marketing, but it may be foundational for others, and I think everybody will probably learn something. I always pick up interesting facts and recent developments as far as the search engines whenever she and I exchange information. Once she's done with her presentation, I'm going to take back control of the screen, and I'm going to be talking more specifics about how to develop a content strategy and plan for your law firm. And then at the end of the end of that segment, we're going to open it up to questions. This webinar is going to move very fast, and we have a lot of information to provide to you today. For that reason, we can't stop during the course of the webinar to answer questions. However, there is a questions area as well as a chat area in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we encourage you to ask any questions that you want answered or any topics that you want covered on the fly. And what we'll do is at the end of the webinar, we'll review all of the questions that have come in, and we'll make sure that we get to as many of them as we can, if not all of them. When we talk about content planning, and in just a moment I'll hand it over to Victoria, but I want you to think about where your practice is going and where the internet has gone and how far we've come. This is content, that is the foundation of almost every single law firm that we see succeeding online and getting huge returns on investment today. And it's only going to get more and more important in the future as the internet continues to expand and evolve. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Victoria. I'm going to change presenters here. You may notice that the screen sharing goes away just briefly, and then Victoria will pick it up from there. Did you get the invite, Victoria?
I did. I am just changing screens here real quick. Let's see. Okay.
And by the way, we are both in the Lawlytics office in Tucson, but we can't be in the same room so we don't get echo, and that's why we have this communication lag.
Okay. Are we seeing my screen here, Dan?
Not yet. It looks like it's still coming up from my end.
I see. Let me have a look here. Let's see, how about now?
It looks like it's thinking about something and wants to pull something up, but all I'm seeing is black.
Shoot. I am not sure what is happening here.
I'm going to put myself on mute, and I'm going to come down the hall and see if I can give you a hand. Bear with
Thank
us,
you so
everybody.
much. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Victoria Blute, and as Dan said, I'm the community manager here at Lawlytics. I am so happy that I get to co-present this webinar, and I want to thank you for joining us. There's a lot of valuable information in this clinic, and I hope that when we're finished today, you'll feel more empowered to consistently produce great content by making a plan that will work for you. As Dan said, in terms of what I do here, my goal is really to keep Lawlytics clients ahead of the curve when it comes to web technology. So I keep my eye on what search engines are up to, search engine optimization, social media, trends in web and mobile design, and finding ways to make writing easier and more efficient. These are all things that I'm really passionate about, writing, analysis, and finding ways to make things simpler so that you can do productive, rewarding work. But enough about what I do here. Let's discuss what you're thinking about doing, and that is making a content plan. Where your web presence is concerned, content has some serious value. There's no doubt that creating substantive educational content is going to take some time and effort on your part, but with a well-organized plan, I think you'll be surprised at what you can get done when it comes to producing content for your website. I have rarely seen anyone who is both maximally productive and hasn't laid out a plan for how they want to accomplish it all. And that is one reason that I really believe in taking some prep time to plan your content. As this quote by Victor Hugo indicates, I think the spoils really do go to those who can plan their time and take control of things. So without any further ado, let's get down to brass tacks. So what this clinic will cover, in my section of the webinar, here's what we're going to talk about. Number one, why you should care about content. Here we'll talk about why content matters. There are a number of reasons why content is beneficial and will continue to be beneficial as we move into 2016. Search engines. So part of understanding why content matters so much is understanding search engines and how they do what they do and why. And that's why I'll give you a quick rundown of search engine history, and that'll give you some context and framework for understanding how search engines have evolved over time to meet user needs and to improve the results that users get when they have a query. I'll also discuss the ways that search engines, particularly Google, have written algorithms that are designed to stop people from getting ahead unfairly in the search engine rankings. As a side note here, I should say that I may refer to search engines in general as Google during this presentation. The reason being that Google is the world's most popular search engine. There is a reason that we have the verb to Google now. So let's move ahead here. Why you should care about content. If we're going to discuss why you should care about content, then we should first look at where that content is found. Naturally, I think we expect to find content on websites, but unless somebody knows your website address, unless they're specifically looking for you, there is a very good chance that they'll start with a search engine query first. Search engines are the biggest driver of traffic anywhere on the web, and they're the primary navigation method for internet users. Think of search engines as the roads that take people where they want to go on the web. So let's talk about search engines for a second, or more to the point perhaps, the people who are using them. So we know people use search engines to shop. We know that they use search engines to entertain themselves, which is probably one reason that 2 million cat videos were uploaded to the web this year. But one of the major reasons that people use search engines is to do research. Research, by its definition, is the systematic investigation into and the study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and to reach new conclusions. Bottom line, search engine users are trying to learn something new. In the past, if you wanted to know something simple like an address or a phone number, you might look in the phone book. Something more complicated might warrant, say, a trip to the library. But now, with the internet at our fingertips, queries from simple to complex are generally handled by search engines. If we go back to the definition of research, the materials and the sources that are meant to help searchers reach new conclusions today are going to be high-quality educational content. People of all different ages and backgrounds use search engines to find sites that help users perform tasks and provide useful information. For example, a college student might use Google to help them research material for a term paper, or somebody might find out how to repair a sink on their own or look up a missing instruction manual. Companies use search engines as well. They may use it to research a potential employee or to find out which competitor websites their clients are visiting. So people not only ask a lot of varying questions to Google and in varying ways and on varying devices, but they ask Google questions a lot. In the last few minutes that I've been speaking to you, more than 13 million Google searches will be performed. So, searcher makes a query, Google brings back some results. What are these searchers looking for as they skim the pages that Google returns to them? Believe it or not, there are some emotional elements to exploring content on the web. Your website is often the first impression that a potential client gets about your firm. And content, good or bad, makes a major first impression on searchers. A recent survey suggests that more than 60% of people said that they quote-unquote feel better about companies that write custom content on a regular basis. People make decisions about the brands that they choose based on how it makes them feel, and that alone could be worth law firms writing regular, high-quality content. But high-quality content conveys more than just a message in words. It really helps to establish your trust and authority. It makes potential clients feel better about you. If search engine users stumble upon your site and discover your firm regularly posts good content that answers important, specific questions that they have, they are likely to make a habit of returning to see what else you've written. Best of all, it may make them more likely to engage with your firm. So now we know that clients like high-quality content because of how it makes them feel, but how do they prefer to take in that content? Marketing looks different now than it used to. If you've got the impression that advertisements will reach and influence potential clients better than content, this is a stance you may want to reconsider. We live in a world that is full of advertisements now, and they don't affect potential clients in the way that they used to. In the digital age, 70% of customers prefer to learn about a company not through advertisements, but through content. People like articles, and this could be a great shift in the way that we think about marketing. Remember how we said earlier that people are using search engines to do research? A website article or a blog has the tremendous ability to influence, even more so than a 30-second television spot or a print ad. Search engine users have lots of questions, and they're asking those questions to search engines. If your content addresses those questions with robust, easy-to-read answers, you are going to build trust and authority while you give search engine users just exactly what they're looking for. So we know what search engine users are looking for, and we know how content makes them feel, and we know now how they prefer to receive that content. But what do potential clients value? And the answer to that is usefulness. Yet again, another recent study says that 9 out of 10 consumers find custom content useful. This is not a huge surprise if you ask me. Good content helps clients clear up questions and make decisions, and that decision may be to choose your law firm over many others. So being a trustworthy authority on a subject is great, but More than that, clients are researching. They are looking for answers to their questions. So again, if you can answer their questions quickly, thoroughly, and in a way that's easy to understand, you're going to have a major advantage over law firms that aren't considering content as an important part of their web presence. Okay, part two. We've talked about why content matters from a client perspective, but what about the perspective of the tools that clients are using? Search engines. Google has famously said that they want website owners to make websites for users and not for search engines. It's a nice concept, isn't it? But it's a little empty unless we understand what users want and what search engines want. Because we have to recognize that at the end of the day, Google as a company has goals too. So we've talked about what users want. Let's talk about what search engines want. So, like I said, Google's aim is to give search engine users the most relevant content for their queries. How do they do that? By searching the web all over for that relevant content. And relevant content is high-quality content. It is not meant to deceive or to be fluffy. It answers users' questions to the fullest extent. And Google is busy all the time scouring the web for new content that it can add to its collection. Humans can look at two web pages and easily make a distinction about the meaning and the value of them. However, Google is just a computer, sadly. It has to find a way to decide how relevant and useful web page content is and make a decision about its quality. So, as an elegant solution to the problem, Google's programmers have written amazing programs and algorithms to help get users the answers that they're looking for. And we'll talk about these algorithms a little bit later. For right now, the point here is that both Google and those using Google love high-quality content. It would be a monumental task to try to make search engines, search engine users, and even referral sources happy all at once if they wanted different things from your law firm. But we are in luck here because conveniently, they all want the same thing. They want quality content. So it should be pretty clear at this point that content really matters. We've talked a little bit about the usefulness of content, but what other aspects define good content? To understand that, we can look a little bit at how Google has evolved over time. I said earlier that Google's aim is to give searchers the most relevant content for their queries. And with 60 trillion individual pages on the web, here's how they do that. Basically, there are three parts to how search engines work. They crawl, they index, and they retrieve. Google has bots or spiders or whatever you'd like to call them that are busy all the time crawling the web. They follow links from page to page and they see what's there. Google then sorts those pages by content and other factors. Then comes indexing. Once Google has found and analyzed a web page, it puts it into its index. That way, Google can quickly access it later. To give you some perspective on how busy Google is, the Google index is over 100 million gigabytes. Huge. Lastly, we have retrieval. This is the whole point of crawling and indexing. When a user types in a query that's related to a page, Google can quickly decide what is most relevant and pull that information from its index, and then it can offer it up to users. So that's a basic depiction of how search engines work. It seems easy enough, but we have to remember that search engines were once very primitive. It might seem kind of humorous now, but Yahoo Search used to just be a web page of other people's favorite web pages. Search engines are pretty easy to use today, but they were not always so easy to navigate. Let's talk a little bit about early Google. When Google's founders started the search engine in the winter of 1996, searching was primarily keyword-based. Sites were ranked based on mentions on other sites. Having the world's information stored somewhere, it was a nice idea, but it needed to be perfected a little bit more. Because Google's search methods weren't particularly great at that time, it left a lot of room for people who wanted to cheat the system and to have their web pages ranked more highly. Enter black hat search engine optimization. Black hat SEO became a real problem for search engines. As I said before, Google's goal is to provide quality websites for those who are searching for them. Unfortunately, because many people want to have their website returned at the top of search results, people found ways to trick the search engine into ranking really low-quality sites highly. These sorts of practices became a major temptation for companies who were looking to get their websites sort of quote-unquote on the search engines, if you will. What a time this must have been for people who were engaging in these practices. It was easy to do, it was very profitable, and for those who were filling search engines with nothing but spam, they didn't have to do a whole lot every day. In one case I read, a black hat SEO provider added 45 million words of spam to the web every day. But while these black hat providers were turning a big profit, users were getting really frustrated, and so was Google. So what did Google do? It got smarter. Google, as we know, employs some very clever, bright people. Those people are busy changing Google's algorithms. The result is that pages today are ranked on over 200 different factors, one of which is the quality of the content that's provided. Google later introduced some search algorithms like Panda and Penguin into the mix. These algorithms are busy searching the internet for web spam. Panda was released in 2011, and it's focused on finding low-quality websites, ones that offer up really thin content. Penguin was introduced a year later. This algorithm is busy decreasing the rankings of websites that violate Google's webmaster guidelines. So, whether it's thin content, scraped content, link schemes, or otherwise, Google is getting smarter about spotting content that does nothing for users. These algorithms are making search engines better. Additionally, Google has recently introduced RankBrain. It's a piece of artificial intelligence that's busy learning about the way humans naturally use language, the result being that Google could give searchers better results. Google cares so much about high-quality content because the company recognizes that its users do too. And that's why Google wants you to make websites for users and not for search engines. Their guidelines very much reflect that. So now let's talk about the anatomy of high-quality content. So number one on the list is significance. Is your content significant? Ask yourself how relevant your content is to potential clients. Relevant content adds value to the conversation. It makes your clients feel that you understand what they're looking for and that it may make them more likely to engage with your firm. When Google users type in a query, Google wants to give them back results that as much as possible answer their questions. So it's important to know what kind of questions your clients are asking. It's worth noting here that clients won't just type in some search keywords. They are legitimately asking some difficult questions to Google. You'll want to find ways to address those questions through your content. So thinking ahead about what clients are asking and making sure that your content addresses that in conjunction with the fact that Google's bots will find your website, this puts your site in a position to be highly relevant for the specific questions that search engine users are asking. Next up, is your content unique? This is your chance to not only add something of value to the conversation, but to show potential clients that your content is one of a kind. This is an area not to skimp on. Nobody likes a plagiarist, and that includes Google. Google has been very specific in saying that duplicate content in one part of your site can hurt the site altogether. So really be careful about writing your own material. Next up, is your content insightful? What new pieces of information does your content add to the overall conversation? I think the goal here is to have readers walk away with the sense that they have learned something new from reading what you have to say. And whether that was something that they didn't know about the law or thought that they did, the content that you write should be intelligent and offer readers something profound. Again, another reason to make sure you're writing your own content. If you do that, by scraping content from other sites, you're not adding anything new to the conversation. So if you want to cite another source, absolutely, go for it. But the analysis should really be all of your own. Lastly, is your content trustworthy? There is that word again, trust. Remember what we saw earlier about how users feel about content. There are lots of components to trustworthiness: the accuracy of the information provided, the expertise of the person who's providing it, how in-depth the material is, among other things. Now, I know that this is a lot to keep at the forefront of your mind, and therefore, yet another reason that it's a good idea to make a solid plan for your content. Give your content some thought. Before you ever start scheduling your writing, it's worth identifying your goals first. Knowing what your goals are will help you to figure out where you're headed in the long term. One of the other reasons you'll want to give your content some thought is that you'll want to tailor your content to your potential clients. Tailoring your content not only shows Google that you're offering up unique, innovative material, but it also helps to ensure that your website is attracting the right kind of traffic. Because the goal here is not to attract any or all traffic, it's about attracting the right kind of traffic. So you'll want to plan your objectives. Make sure you know the purpose of the content that you plan on writing, whether it's educating potential clients about an intricate aspect of your practice or getting them familiar with legal vocabulary. Maybe you want to inspire them with a story that you want to share about your practice. Whatever the case may be, understanding why you're writing something and what purpose it serves will help you write when it comes time and will help you build a roadmap. Knowing your audience is also an important part before you begin planning. Dan will talk about this more specifically later in the webinar, but for now, think about who's reading your content. What kind of education do they have? What are they interested in learning about? If you can put yourself in the mindset of those reading your content, it can help you to better tailor the material to their needs. That said, if you've already been writing content for your website, you may also want to invest some time in doing an audit. Sit down with the content you've got already, see which sort of posts are getting the most attention, which ones are engaging your readership, what sort of material is falling flat, what's missing. This can help you to shy away from posts or topics that won't help you to achieve your goals, and that'll help you to be more productive. Okay, now let's talk about planning the work. Firstly, make reasonable goals. If you set the bar too high to begin with, you are going to feel stressed out and panicked if you haven't completed what you've set out to do. If you make a plan to do a little work every day, you'll see the results add up over time. You need a plan that you can stick to. As an example, let's say you set a goal to write 2 600-word blogs in an hour's time. If you discover that your hour isn't up and you've got more time to write, do 3. Set reasonable goals and then adjust them when necessary to really make the best use of your time. Now let's think about carving out the time in your schedule. Scheduling when you'll write is important, so make sure you have a focused plan for what you intend to write and when you intend to write it. That way, you show up to your scheduled writing time ready to do just that. Write. You're not busy finding materials you need or wondering what to write, you're just doing writing. Another way to make sure that you're using your time wisely is by implementing writing tools. There are a number of tools available, many for free, that can really help to minimize the amount of additional work that you have to do and can help you from being distracted by other things. Staying focused is really key here. For example, if you've got tired eyes or a tired mind, think about using a grammar and spelling checker to help you catch errors you might otherwise miss. If you struggle to stay focused while you're working, think about using tools like Self-Control or OmWriter, tools like this that help keep everything else at bay while you're writing. And this may seem like a simple thing, but I think one of the best things that you can do is writing your plan down in your schedule. To-do lists are not all that helpful, but a schedule with specific time allotted for tasks is very helpful. Putting your writing tasks alongside your other work will help you to remember what you've set out to do. So now that you've planned the work, you can work the plan. Here we are. You've done the strategizing. Now it really matters that you commit to the plan that you've created. A good plan and really having the resolve to follow it will get you good results in the long term. But as an example, just as you wouldn't see any changes in your fitness if you made a plan to go to the gym 3 times a week and you only ended up going once a month, it is virtually impossible to see results in a content plan unless you stick to it. Other than committing to your schedule, minimizing distractions and multitasking can help you too. Whether that means you have the kids go play in the backyard, shut the door to your office, turn off your phone, you need to make sure that your time is devoted solely to writing. Show up prepared, use that time wisely, and over time you will have a collection of meaningful content that will really help to boost your law firm's business. Multitasking, that could really be a problem too. Don't answer phone calls or texts while you're writing, even if you feel like it's just a small distraction. Do one thing at a time. If you've assigned, say, 30 minutes for writing, don't spend that time writing and editing. You can always clean up the text later, but for now, getting your thoughts down, even if they're not perfect, is really valuable. Keep in mind that interruptions to your time that you have set up for writing, will set your progress back. Interruptions are annoying, and furthermore, it's not an efficient use of your time. Your time is valuable and it's worth respecting, so make sure it's being used well. When you're done writing your content, find ways to share it. Search engines, of course, will find your content, but it's really worth publishing links to your blog on social media, through email. And if that sounds like a lot of extra work, again, we are in luck because there are some amazing tools, many of them are free, that can help you. So tools like Hootsuite are great for social media management, and there are a number of email marketing tools that can help you send out lots of emails at an optimal time for people to read them. Lastly, your content can inform your content. And what do I mean by that? This is a major benefit of sticking to your plan. Once you've written lots of content, you can look back at that content to see what pieces are the most engaging. The result is that you can continuously write better content over time by looking at your current content data. So there are other ways to share content as well. One fantastic part of the internet is the fact that we have access to so many different multimedia tools, and people learn about things in so many different ways. That's something for lawyers to think about. Text, of course, is the most obvious way to share content, but videos, podcasts, and infographics will help to engage your readership as well. People find videos and podcasts very entertaining. It's a fun, different, interesting way to tell people about what you know, and it requires very minimal effort on the part of your audience members. As you start building up your content, this is something you may want to think about. So, before I hand the mic back to Dan here, let's do a quick summary. Think about your goals before you plan your content. Those goals will help to streamline your scheduling and all of the content that you write. Plan reasonably and wisely. Respect your goals, your plan, and your time. Saying no to multitasking and distractions will really help to maximize your productivity. Commit to your plan. Want to see results? You can't abandon your strategy. We live in a world where we can get a lot of things immediately, but some things do require a little bit of patience and effort. This is one of them. And lastly, assess and adjust your plan as necessary. If you find out that you work better in the mornings than you do at night, change your plan. If you find out that on one day you only have 30 minutes available to you and not an hour, change your plan to 30 minutes of writing that day. Don't just abandon everything. The plan that you make isn't entirely static, and that's a good thing because life happens. However, being prepared for what you need to do and being flexible can help you to produce good content on a regular basis. And remember, checking to make sure your content is significant, unique, insightful, and trustworthy will help you to engage with more potential clients, and it may keep you out of trouble with Google. Search engines, search engine users, and referral sources all love high-quality content. So now that you're familiar with some fundamentals, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Dan, who will present some detailed aspects of content planning. Dan?
Great, thanks, Victoria. And I've got the switch here, and I'll be right with you showing my screen. Okay, can you give me a quick verification whether you can see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay, I'm going to mute you, and I'll get back with you in a minute.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Victoria. Okay, so last night I was reading an article about the CEO of Comcast, the cable company, and their dilemma about why the cable company, Comcast, but cable companies in general are so despised in general by the population, even though they at least somewhat continue to use them. And it was interesting to me, the discussion that really revolved around how people's expectation as to content, whether that's content from network television or from shows that are on HBO or other premium channels, has really changed. And the internet has, by and large, through YouTube, through Netflix, and through other sources, created this general expectation amongst the public that content should be readily available, and it should be, for the most part, free. And I've observed that in my own behavior. I used to read the newspaper, then started reading it online. And then when my local paper here in Tucson started trying to charge to read it, I just stopped going there because for whatever reason, most content from my perspective, and this is verified across most people these days, people don't expect to pay for content. In fact, they expect to get their content for free. And I thought it was a really good way to start this discussion. I was glad that I saw that, because it really frames how far we've come from where we started with the internet, at least when I started practicing law in the late 1990s. When I started practicing law, I was able to build a thriving practice in Seattle and then another one in Phoenix using internet, and for the most part using content, giving people what they wanted to read, people in the form of referral sources and potential clients. But it wasn't as predictable back then because the internet was evolving and how people related to it was evolving. Back then, I remember ordering something on Amazon from my apartment in Seattle and doing it with a dial-up connection and being so surprised and impressed when within 10 hours it was on my doorstep. And this was in Seattle, and this was in the early days of Amazon, and of course it was a book. But man, have expectations changed from then about what we can do online, and most of it is not novel anymore. And so as you look at this first slide and think about where your firm will be on the success curve in the next coming years, or even in 10 years from now, the good news is, from my perspective, that if you're looking at a 5-year or a 10-year horizon, what's going to happen is much more predictable now than it was when the internet was getting started. Now, that's not to say that there's going to be a lag in technology advances. Of course, it's going to continue at even a faster pace. But the way that people relate to the internet and the way that people relate to attorneys on the internet is not going to change all that much. And here's what I have observed over the last several years of doing this. First of all, content. There's been this phrase out there that content is king. And that phrase has been out there for a long time, and it's a phrase that Google and the other search engines have espoused for a long time. But there were ways around the king, and the king really didn't have as much power as the search engines would like the king to have had. Well, that has recently changed in a big way. And when you look at the power of content now, it's an exciting time, because a solo attorney, somebody even just out of law school, with more time on their hands than their competitors, can put themselves in a superior position, not just in the short term, which is where advertising used to be, but in the long term. And that's because over the course of months and years, the value of content allows you as an attorney to build an asset that appreciates and continues to produce revenue, recognition, referrals, and bottom line profits for your law firm. There is a reality out there that is, at this day and age, it doesn't matter if you have more money than the other guy to spend. You can spend it on all kinds of advertisements. But if the other guy with a limited or even no budget spends their time really communicating online through high quality content, that is going to put them well ahead and really allow them to weather any additional sea changes that we have in the way that attorneys practice law. Now, going back to the example of the Comcast CEO and what he was saying, if you look at the way that people expect to consume free information, information used to be something that we as attorneys had to sell. In this day and age, if we don't give away information on the internet to our clients and potential clients, somebody else will. And in doing so, they're going to earn their trust, they're going to earn their following, and ultimately they're going to earn their business. And so we have to get out of the mindset as attorneys that we have information to sell, because by and large, we don't at this point. People do expect it for free. And so how can you plan to get around that and to thrive in this new content and information driven reality? Well, now is the time to start planning. In fact, several years ago was the time to start planning, but if you're just getting to it now, you're still at the front end of the curve, and there's still time to build yourself an online content infrastructure that will weather any coming storms in the practice of law, and that will set you up for a high return on investment of either the time or the money that you've spent creating that content for years to come. Let's look at some myths about how law firms succeed online. So the biggest spenders used to always win. When I first started practicing, the yellow pages were the go-to option. And if I didn't buy a double truck or a triple truck at $20,000 a month, then the person that did was probably going to get more business than me, because there were only so many words that I could put on my yellow page ad. There are only so many really so many concepts that you can get across, and you can't really interact with potential clients that way. Now it's the internet has provided this elastic medium where you can continue to feed it and you can continue to expand on what you're able to communicate with your client base, referral base, and potential clients with virtually no cost at all. The second, and there's a reality, and we've seen it happen here at Lawlytics quite often, that a attorney working on his own, putting in content from, hang on just a second, I'm getting a piece of information. I've been told that my voice is occasionally fading in and out. If that continues to happen, somebody please let me know, and we'll see if we can make additional adjustments. I've adjusted my mic a little bit as well. But so we have seen Lawlytics attorneys get on and put in several hours a night on a regular basis over the course of months and years, and literally take down much bigger, much better funded opponents. And so it doesn't matter what you start with. Doesn't even really matter how many people you have. It's the consistent effort that you put in over time. The second myth, and this is something that we see over and over again with people that even still call me thinking that I'm still a lawyer trying to sell me SEO services, is that clients are dumb and the search engines are dumb. Clients may have an unsophisticated vocabulary when it comes to some of the things that we as attorneys do, but clients are not dumb. And one of the things that they are keenly smart about and very well in tune with is advertisements. Clients, just like you and me, don't like advertisements. If we look at our own behavior of using our DVRs to skip commercials, using ad blockers not to see pay-per-click ads on Google and other websites, clients feel the same way. And if your content is geared blatantly as an advertising message, we're the best, come see us, that type of thing, it's not going to go very far. And to the extent that it is working now, you'll see it fade more and more over time. And writing for the search engines, the way that a lot of SEO people still recommend doing it, stuffing it with keywords, getting backlinks that aren't earned, and so forth. The search engines are very smart now, and they're getting smarter every day. And the notion that an SEO person can trick an army of hundreds, if not thousands, of PhD engineers at Google and the other search engines trying to combat what they do is laughable. A lot of lawyers look at marketing as an afterthought and don't put much thought into what the future is going to be, how they're going to plan for it. And I think that that's one of the big mistakes. And I think that a lot of that starts in law school, when we really aren't focused on how to run a business and the business realities of how we get clients. And while you can succeed, at least in the short term, by just creating good content as it pops into your head, it's not going to be nearly as efficient as creating a solid content plan. And then the final myth is that one size fits all when it comes to content planning. If one size did fit all, we could just basically publish a guide and say, do this, do that, and do this next thing, and you'll succeed. But the reality is that there are so many different combinations of geography, practice area, personality, desired client base, firm composition, that one size doesn't fit all. In fact, one size usually doesn't fit more than one. And so the tools that I intend to give you during the remainder of this webinar are really tools to help you decide what's best for you and your firm as you continue to think about and plan your future in content. When I talk about a content plan, a plan really should be a written document or a document on a word processor. Think of it like a business plan. And there's a number of reasons for this. Even if you're a solo practitioner, even if you're calling all the shots, or if you're an attorney in a firm of multiple people, but you still call all the shots, it still makes sense to put this in writing so that you have an ability to maintain the focus of what's going to be done. You have a basically a guidebook with milestones and accountabilities throughout the process of creating this plan, because a content plan, when done right, is not just something that can be executed in a week, a month, or even a half a year. It's something that over the course of 1 to 3 years can really turn your firm around, turn it into something fantastic. And having this written document prevents mission creep, prevents you from losing focus when somebody calls and says, well, I can sell you to the top of Google right now. All you have to do is trust me and follow my lead. And so having the content plan will help to keep you on track. The content plan should, like I said, be a 1 to 3 year horizon, depending on how fast you think you can get the content created. It should articulate how the content is going to be presented, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. It should have at least a rough schedule of when the content is going to be produced, and it should assign who is accountable for each piece of content. If one person is accountable, still should do it, so that if you're the only one creating it for your firm, that you stick to the schedule. Like Victoria said, you're planning the work and working the plan. And if you have multiple people doing it, so for example, let's say you make the plan and then you have a law clerk writing the content, or you outsource it to a company like Lawlytics to write it, or you're having somebody else in your firm, and then it comes back to you for editorial revisions and so forth. Make sure that the plan clearly articulates who is going to be doing what and when. when it comes to creating your content, there's a number of different ways of approaching it. I find this to be helpful, thinking about it from the perspective of a journalist. Anybody who's taken a journalism class knows the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, and then the addition of how. We've put a little bit of a different spin on it here at Lawlytics. When we talk about the who, we're talking about who are your potential clients and referral sources. In other words, who is your audience? What questions are they asking? When do they want the answers? Typically that means now, but there's some nuance to that. Where are they at? Meaning, where are they at geographically? And why should they listen to you amongst the sea of other voices from other attorneys that are out there, trust you and hire you? And then finally, once all of this is articulated, how do you organize it all and get it put on your website in a way that makes sense to both your users and the search engines? So let's talk about the who first. Who are your potential clients and referral sources? It really helps to articulate this and put some thought into what kind of people do you want to attract? Who are you writing to? If you're writing specifically to consumers of your legal services, if you're in a consumer-facing type practice, what does the ideal potential client look like? What are other potential clients that you might want to engage with? What do they look like? What questions do they ask? What are their needs? Where do they come from? How do they consume their information? What demographic are they? If they're younger, they're probably consuming more on mobile. If they're older, then maybe a little bit more on desktop. Are they going to be looking at it at work, at home, on the fly, during the commute? Is mommy going to be looking up the information for them because they're in jail or they're not responsible enough? Is a child of an elderly parent going to be looking for information on elder law issues? Who you're writing to is very important, and that goes for referral sources as well. And then you have to come to the realization that multiple people are going to be reading this, and you can benefit from multiple referral sources and potential clients. And so how do you reconcile when you have disparate audiences with different personality sets, different education levels, different needs, and how are you going to address those? And there's, this webinar is not going to give you the answers of how to do that, because those are very specific. But just as an example, let's say you're writing, let's say you're a criminal attorney who does appellate work, and you have two separate audiences. Audience one are criminal defendants who have lost at trial, who you want to potentially represent on appeal. Audience two is other defense attorneys who might have tried the case or who might be otherwise involved, who don't do appellate work, who might refer the case to you. And you can take a journalistic approach in a situation like that, where you start with the basic concepts, answer the defendant's questions more simply, and then drill down and get more nuanced, have citations, have case law, have your personal experiences with it, have local rules, however resonates with both. But in that specific example, there's a good chance that the defendant is just going to stop reading when they get the information that they need, whereas the referral source may continue on. Think about what questions your potential clients and referral sources are asking you. And this is probably the most important thing when it comes to creating your content. Think about it this way. If you're sitting across the desk from a potential client who has whatever problem you solve on a regular basis, what questions is that person asking? And the questions that your potential clients ask when they consult with you, or your clients ask during the course of their case, those are the same questions that they're asking online. And when you think about the search engines as just a place to ask questions, it turns out that they're asking those questions very much the same way of the search engines as they ask them of you when you're sitting in your conference room with them. And so pay attention to the words they use, pay attention to the concerns that they have. And if you are able to address all of their questions, then you'll have something. And when you look at the questions that they're asking, if you might want to ask yourself, are answering these questions relevant to growing your practice? The answer is almost always yes, because if it takes you 5 minutes to write an answer to a question, even if only one person ever asks that and they find your site and the answer and you've supplied that with them, they're highly likely to engage you versus engaging somebody who hasn't answered that question. And then the final question is, should you plan to provide detailed answers? The answer is almost always yes. The more details you can go into, the better. And I get a lot of blowback from attorneys on this particular issue. Well, why should I go in depth? They don't care about the details. And so in a lot of respects, that's true. The average, say, assault defendant or personal injury plaintiff is not going to care about the nuances. They're going to care about that you know what you're doing and that you're looking out for them. But the more you put in there, the more likely you are to engage them and to answer the questions that they're asking. And unfortunately, as attorneys, we don't get to make the call of what resonates with any given reader or potential client. Just like when we're standing in front of a jury, we don't really get to make the call as to what they base their decision on. It could be that I wore a pair of shoes that they liked better than the prosecutor when I was doing criminal defense work. It could be that something that I said or the way that I stood pissed them off, or the prosecutor had a fidget that they didn't like. And these are very real things online as well. And so if you provide all of the details, everything that you can think of, the beauty of it is that when they're searching online, they're asking the question typically of Google. They're not searching your website themselves. And Google is going to see that you're answering the question in the way that they're asking it, and they're going to highlight that you're answering it. And then when the person gets to the page, they might not read everything that you have, but they're certainly going to look for the answer that you've provided and that Google has instructed them that it exists there. And then finally, think about what questions your potential clients and referral sources aren't asking but should be. And this is a point that most attorneys don't really consider when they're marketing their services. Most attorneys look at legal services as a zero-sum game. And for the most part, it is. There's only so many arrests, there's only so many accidents, and so forth. But especially if you're in a practice, or you have a type of practice, or if you have multiple attorneys that do different types of law that you can kind of cross-market with, there's a chance to engage people that have come to your website for one reason and show them that there's another need. So some low-hanging fruit is somebody's looking for medical power of attorney. You might want to sell them estate planning services. If they're looking for real estate, you might want to sell them tax planning or insurance. There's all kinds of cross-marketing opportunities, and there's other services that they might not even think of as well. And so there's a way that by thinking about the needs and the personas of your potential clients and your clients, you can create business where there didn't seem to be any either. And this also helps with the search engines. When do your clients want the answers to the questions that they're asking? The short answer is people want answers now. People are expecting to get the answers in less than 5 seconds when they type them into Google. And if they don't, they typically will go somewhere else. and that's the reality of the information delivery. But think about the time horizon for the decision-making process of your clients and potential clients. So if you have somebody that was arrested yesterday and they're being arraigned tomorrow, then they need to make an immediate decision, and you need to make sure that they get to the answer right away. But when they're looking at something that's more long range, like estate planning or tax planning, they may come back to your website multiple times. And if each time they come back, they dig a little deeper, they learn a little something more, by the time they're ready to reach out to you, they may be very well ready to not only come talk to you, but to hire you without a whole bunch of additional questions, knowing what they want. Where are they? Geography is typically very important to what people are searching for. And so if you are practicing in one state, you don't want to make your content so general that it doesn't just focus on your state if you're not taking business elsewhere. So, for example, if you're doing estate planning in California, you probably don't want to just say estate planning, because it's not going to attract the relevant searches. Whereas if you talk about Los Angeles estate planning stuff, even though it might not necessarily be specific to Los Angeles, it can help. And there's ways that you can think about working in location. And there's a couple ways that you should look at it. One is does the location matter to the question? So in other words, if the potential client is going to a search engine and asking a question about what do I do with my arraignment in Seattle Municipal Court this Friday, well, that's a location-specific question. But if they're going and they're saying, what is the statute of limitations for assault in Washington State, for example, the fact that they're in Seattle or they're in Tacoma or any other place doesn't matter to the question, but the location can matter as far as the answer goes. And by this I mean, once you've gotten the person there, if they're searching specifically for something that is a higher level concept, and you frame that high level concept, but then you drill down and you say something that matters on a local level, whether it's a local rule, whether it's some nuance, whether it's even just some local mention, that can make a difference in not only attracting visitors to the search engine, but also showing those clients that do happen to exist on the local level that you care. So it's as you plan what you're going to write, think about how your location works in. And then the next question is why? Why should they listen to you, trust you, and hire you? What makes you, as an attorney, persuasive to that particular potential client? How do you stand out from your competition? If you think about this before you start writing, and you don't just either blindly copy what other people are doing or delegate it to somebody who just churns it out on a formula basis, there's always a way to frame or reframe the issues that you're talking about in a way that is unique to your firm, that captures your firm's personality and also resonates in some way with that potential client or referral source persona. So how do you organize all of this and make it happen? How do you get it on your website, and how do you get it to the point where it actually becomes an asset? We're going to talk about a couple different types of pages, evergreen pages versus blog posts. We're going to talk about site navigation briefly, and then we're going to talk about things that you can do beyond the written content on your website. When it comes down to writing content for your web, we at Lawlytics look at it like basically there's two bins. So you have evergreen pages and you have blog posts. And all Lawlytics sites have a built-in blog, and they have the ability to create an unlimited number of evergreen pages and nest them in any hierarchy that you want. So an evergreen page is something that is substantive. It talks about something that is not likely to change in the near future. So you're talking about potentially a statute that's hardly ever amended. You're talking about case law that's rarely changed. You're talking about procedures. You're talking about things that you could rely on being the same or very similar in a year from now or 2 years from now. Blog posts, on the other hand, is or more like looking down at a river from a bridge that goes across it. The flow of posts is constantly changing. As you add a new post, it pushes down the post that was chronologically preceded it. And blog posts are a way for you to convey information about things that are happening now, about opinions and so forth. And let's take a little bit of a deeper look. When you're talking about what types of evergreen pages to post, from your client's perspective, they're going to want to know, first of all, do you understand their problem? If you don't understand their problem, then they probably don't care to look any further. And understanding their problem is basically demonstrating it through the content, and that's what attracts search engines as well. Do you have a solution? And after they understand those two things, they're going to want to know, do you care? And then they're going to want to know how good you are. In order to show them that you understand the problem, you can create a wide array of substantive pages that really cascade down from the very general to the very specific in your area of law. So for example, let's say you are doing auto accident law. You can start with a general summary of what it means to be a plaintiff in a personal injury case. Then you can cascade down from there and talk about different types of accidents. You can talk about the procedures. You can talk about statute of limitations. You can talk about the collection of evidence. You can talk about what happens during the settlement process. There's all kinds of things that you can do. And each thing you can drill down. And really, you're not done until you've basically exhausted everything that you could possibly explain to a layman, written from a layman's level, layman's point of view, and but at the same time conveying how complex it is. So you want to give them the information, but you want them to come away with the understanding, which is a very legitimate understanding, that while you can explain it to them, it's not necessarily something that they can do for themselves. And you got to keep in mind that as you're planning these pages, every page that you put on your website is a potential point of entry. So in other words, people are going to go to Google, or they're going to get a page that's referred to them on social media. They're going to enter not typically through your home page if you're doing this right, but through a sub page somewhere. And so that page needs to be able to grab their attention and make the case for why you know what you're doing, why you have the solution to their problem, why you care, and that you're good. And you need to, as they come into each of these pages, think of it as leading a dance, because once they're there, then it's up to you to take them and show them where you want them to go next. When you talk about having a solution and they're looking at it, you don't want to just in an oversimplified way tell them, I can solve your problem, or I make your problem disappear, or any kind of platitude. When they're digesting content online, people want to actually see examples of what you've done and how it's worked out. And so the more specific you can be, the more you can comment on those individual pages. So you describe the statute, and then you can tell them what that means to you, how you use that, or how you use it in the past to fight for and secure a good result for a particular client. How much do you care? There's nothing more important than creating rapport. And as soon as they get to that, if you sound like all the other attorneys, I'm aggressive, I'm affordable, I'm effective, and all these platitudes that everybody says, it's not going to get you very far. But if you embed pieces of who you are, why you've become a lawyer, why you care about them, which tells them why they should care about you, it goes a long ways. And as you're planning this, make sure you continually remind yourself, because I see attorneys fall back into this pattern. You're not writing a brief for a court. You don't need citations for the most part. You don't need to convince anybody of precedent. What you need to do is convey that you know what you're doing, that you've done it before, and that you care about them, and that it's complex. And then the question of how good are you? Nobody listens to people that say how good they are, unless you happen to be Donald Trump at this point, apparently. But if you're on your website, they know that you have control over it, and you're saying, I'm the best at this, I'm the premier attorney, I'm the supreme attorney, that type of thing. Most people just tune that out at this point. But what really resonates, and we've seen this work very effectively through review sites like Yelp and like Avvo, and Google is getting into it, and Facebook is even now getting into that as well, is third-party proof. And if you're a Lawlytics member, the best thing that you can do is use the client recommendation and peer recommendation engines within Lawlytics to curate and post really in-depth, thoughtful case results and recommendations. And when you do that, this proof of not only did I take this case that has a very real stake to it and a very real person behind it, and get good proof and get good results from it, but I have this person also saying through a recommendation, through a case result, that I did something good for them. It makes a huge difference. And you want to tell stories. If you're a user of Lawlytics and you use the recommendation engine, for example, if somebody writes you a recommendation, Attorney Bob, thank you so much for helping me. You've turned my life around. You've saved my family. Now, thanks to you, I was able to keep my job, blah, blah, blah. Or you've recovered, this amount of money that's been able to, let me resume my education and put my life back together, whatever the case is. Those things don't really tell your potential clients anything. But what you can do using the Lawlytics engine, and you can do this on any other website if you have the space and you're able to post to it. After the recommendation, use the context area to provide context to it. So this was a case where the defendant came to me, he had 3 priors, or this was a case where the plaintiff was badly injured, he had to stop his college education for a period of 2 years. During that time, he underwent substantive rehab, whatever the case is, and then say, this is what we did, this is what happened in the case, this is what the prosecutor did, or this is what the insurance defense company did. This is how we countered it, and this is how we can do it for you, basically. Those types of stories are what your potential clients relate to. And so if you can plan those out, and this takes a lot of effort and time to plan this and put this together, because it doesn't just depend on you. You have to go and get these recommendations and offers of proof from other people. It makes a big difference. When you talk about blogging is something that is a little more fluid. So, for example, you see an article about something that's happened. A dangerous drug has just been recalled, for example. Well, that's in the news cycle. You probably want to blog about that as quickly as possible while it's hot. Chipotle has closed stores because there's an E. coli scare, or there's been a task force that's went around and rounded up everybody that has an outstanding warrant in Phoenix, or whatever the case may be. Those things are timely. You're not going to be able to plan for those as much because you have to react to them, but it makes sense to monitor the news. But when you're creating your content plan, what you should do is think about reserving time and allocating effort towards those kind of current event type blog posts. You can also plan other types of blog posts, such as editorials, such as series that delve into certain issues. The important thing is when you're planning your blog to look at not only how often you're going to be posting, the rhythm, the voice that you're going to use, but who is going to be responsible for what you're going to be posting, what topics are going to be there, what sources do you monitor to get information to write about, and so forth. It makes a big difference rather than just showing up on a Monday and saying, okay, I think I ought to blog today. What should I blog about? Let's think of something. And we're almost to the end here, and we'll be ready for questions in just a few minutes. When you think about your page navigation, this really goes to the heart of how you organize your information. So let's say you start with that very general page about personal injury, and then cascading down below it, there are 500 additional pages that explain every single detail of all of the cases that you could ever hope to want to attract into your practice. Well, having 500 pieces of information in a navigation is not efficient, and it's not how people use the web anymore anyways. And so you want to think about how your navigation is laid out. Don't have too many pieces of content nested under any one navigation menu. You want to think about how users are going to flow through it. And the goal of planning out your content, and this can be done effectively on a 20-page website, and it can be done effectively on a 5,000-page website. The goal should be that when your potential clients and referral sources go to your website, they do not need to use a search function on your website in order to find what they're looking for. And it takes a lot of planning to get that right, but it's something that's very worthwhile, because even if you have the information there, it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to find what they need in order to make the decision to contact you, which is typically the goal, if they come in asking a semi-related question, but you need to lead them from that point down the point to the point where they actually will be ready to reach out to you. So how do you prioritize all this content? And we've talked about, if you have a website with 500, 1,000, 2,000 pages, you're gonna start to be very competitive, and you could be so with a lot less number of pages in smaller jurisdictions or obscure practice areas. But where to get started and prioritize, I look at it from two perspectives. You've got your internal priorities in your law firm, and then you've got your client-facing priorities. So with your internal priorities, I like to look at it, first of all, from a financial impact. What is the short-term cash flow impact on what you're doing? So are you diverting time away from money-making activities to have attorneys create content? Are you diverting cash that could be spent on disposable advertising that might result in a short-term infusion of cash? Are you investing that in more long-term assets? Can you afford to do that? How long of a horizon do you have to build assets that will, through content, create a much better and healthier long-term ROI? And then, are there cost mitigation benefits from creating the content? And these match up very well with some of the client-facing priorities. But what I mean by cost mitigation is, if you're spending, for example, 2 hours educating the average potential client that comes into your office on a weekly basis, and let's say you have 5 coming into your office on average every week, could that effort that you're spending on an individual basis with each client be delegated to your website by creating content there that educates them and directing them strategically to that content? If you can do that without loss of opportunity to actually have that person retain your firm, then you've freed up many hours over the course of the year, and then those hours can either be reinvested into money-making activities or into cash and business generating activities, such as creating more content. And you really have to consider what are your practice goals. If you're going to be retiring in the next 3 years, your goals as far as content creation goes are probably very different than if you're planning a 10, 20, or 30-year career. And then when you think about the client-facing priorities, you've got the obvious one, which is marketing, but then you also have the ability to have your content serve two other purposes. Client relations, which is keeping up with clients, so that's where a blog can be very effective, showing them new things that are going on, keeping yourself available even after the representation is done as a resource for them to come back to get additional information. And then expectation management. So if you have any expectation management issues with clients in your current practice, there's a big advantage to explaining the processes, explaining what they should expect over the course of the representation on the website and having them digest it there. Then they can go back to it and refer to it when they're up at 2 a.m. ruminating on their case, rather than sending you a 2-page email that you're going to wake up to, or leaving you a voice message, or calling you on the weekend. And then when you talk about client facing, you also want to think about referral sources. So your website, in a very real way, has the ability to turn you into a thought leader, even if you're relatively new to practice. And so if you're writing passionately and comprehensively about your area or areas of practice, and you're publishing on a regular basis, you will naturally get readership. And as you get that readership, a lot of those readers may turn out to be referral sources from other jurisdictions, non-competing lawyers in your jurisdiction, and so forth. And so there's that ancillary benefit. And the best thing is that if planned well, you can do all of these things simultaneously and have the best of all worlds. When we think about prioritizing content for your law firm's website, it always starts with the written content. While there are other forms of content that I'll get to in a moment, the written content on your website, the words that you put in there, are foundational. And there's a couple different reasons for it. The main reason is it is the way that most educated people will consume your content, and it is also the way that the search engines will decide how relevant your page is for the most part. And so you start with written content, and then you build up your visitor options, build up multimedia content, and then build up nurturing systems. The written content, you want to build that up to the point where you actually have a healthy flow of traffic going through your website. Without traffic, none of the other things that we mentioned matter very much at all, because you're not going to convert nobody into a paying client or a referral source. And so focus on the written content first. That may take months. It may take years, and that's okay, because every piece of written content that is out there is going to keep working for you with both potential clients and the search engines. Once you've and as you think about what options people have when they go to your website, once you have people coming there, then you've got to think about what are they doing when they get there. So the average attorney website gives a visitor two options. Option one is to contact you, the attorney, either through filling out a form, sending an email, or dialing a phone. And option two is to go away. And that means usually hitting the back button on the browser, or just simply typing in a new search and going on. As you build up readership, and this is not something that needs to happen right away, because you need to build your foundation of content first, but as you start building up your blog, then you'll have the ability to have people subscribe to your blog, to comment on your blog, and to share it. And so then they've got three more options as an alternative to go away. The thing that you want to avoid is having them go away, and if they do go away, you want to have a reason for them to come back. And so that also, by having additional content that's going through there, it makes a huge difference. Then once you've done that and you have a healthy flow of readers going through there, then you want to give them some what we refer to as loss mitigation measures. So, for example, download this free report on how to handle your bankruptcy, what assets you can keep, or the defendant's guide to handling a DUI case in Portland, Oregon, as some examples. There's all kinds of things that you can do, and you can do them not only for potential clients, but for clients as well. And so you can say, okay, so if you've got somebody coming in and there's information that you want them to review, you can have them download information. You can make them put in their email address so you know that they've downloaded it as well before they come in, and then that gives them a reason to keep coming back too if there's more things that they can download. And then finally, you give them the opportunity to interact with the website, and this is when you've got a substantial amount of traffic going through there. You can use the Lawlytics forms feature in order to do surveys to get information from clients. You can do larger intakes specific to certain cases. You can get feedback. You can have them interact in all kinds of different ways. But it doesn't make sense to build these things if you're playing to an empty audience. So start with content first. And then once you've done the written content, that is, then you can start adding graphics. And by graphics, typically it means infographics, things that give visual learners an ability to consume, print out, hold in their hand, see your firm's logo and phone number over and over again, remind them. Then on top of that, then you can add videos, and then you can add videos to the videos. You can add audio podcasts as well. And then you can think about building up nurturing systems. So you have a potential client that comes to your website. Maybe they've subscribed to your website, or to your newsletter rather, and maybe you send it out once a week or once a month. Well, that's kind of expected, and they might not pay much attention to it. But if they go to your website and they request to be on your bankruptcy cutting edge announcement list, or they subscribe to your 5-day course on how to negotiate with an insurance company, or how to not negotiate with an insurance company, or whatever you want to put out there, it gives them not only a reason to give them your contact information, but it keeps them engaged and it keeps them coming back. And you can do that during the intake process before they're a client. You can do that during their case if there's information that you want to feed them over the course of time. So say a deposition is a month away. You don't want to just send them something that they're going to forget about it all in one pamphlet. You want to send them, here's your 3 paragraphs for day 1 that I want you to read to think about getting ready for your depo. Here's day 2, day 3, and so forth. And you can also do it post representation, and you can have them continue to go back to your website to get additional facts about how their case might be affected in the future, or when they might need to see you again for different things. There's all kinds of things that you can do depending on your practice, and it's just a matter of really thinking through what those things are. Tying it all together, and this is just a summary at this point. Very important to have a detailed written plan with articulable accountabilities, include a timeline, and most important, get started. There's no time like now, and the further we delay as attorneys on getting started with building this kind of content, the further behind we stand to get. I'm going to open Victoria's mic back up, and she's been looking at the questions as they've been coming in, and I haven't had a chance, since I've been talking probably for far too long at this point, to really look through and digest them. So Victoria, can you hear me?
I can, Dan. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Okay, so in terms of the questions that are queued up here, it looks like I have a lot of questions about Lawlytics content and content planning. One question I have here, I guess it's a 2-part question, is what content planning services does Lawlytics provide, and how does that content planning work?
Okay, so and I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch by any means. Just to give you a little bit of background, we started Lawlytics as a software company where attorneys were empowered to get in and write their own content and really do everything themselves, and that power remains obviously for attorneys who are members and want to use it, and attorneys who want to join as well. But what we discovered after a year or so of people really using the system well is that attorneys who started out writing their own content tended to get very busy by virtue of writing that content. And so the time that they spent early on writing on Lawlytics made it so that they had enough of a case flow that it made more sense for them to focus on their cases and on money-making activities rather than on continuing to write for the web. And what we realized in talking to attorneys that were in that situation is that attorneys really, they trusted us and they wanted to have an ability to have us kind of pick up where they left off. And so we started this content creation service, and it's evolved into a comprehensive service where not only can we create content for attorneys from scratch. So, for example, you have a new website and you want us to get you started, or say you want to have blogs going through there on a monthly basis. You want to have 10 blog posts, for example. We can do that. But we also have a very robust content planning feature now as well for attorneys that just don't have the time to do it. And the gist of it, though, is it's all on an individual basis. What we do is we talk to you about your firm's needs, your firm's goals, and so forth, and determine together with your needs, where your firm's at with your web presence and what your budget is, how much content you need. We like to kind of take a graduated or minimalist approach to start out with, and make sure that you're getting what you need, but not anything more than you need that you would have to pay for. And so it's really, as far as how it works, we've got a content department that operates from within our Tucson office. It's staffed with lawyers who write the content and do the content planning as well. Did that address the question, or was there another part?
That addresses that question. I do have another interesting question here that's a tool-related question that I wonder if you might be able to answer. What is the best product to use to plan content?
Well, so I think anything that is going to be easy for an attorney to work with and write. When I outline my business plans, I typically use Google Docs. I like it because it's in the cloud and it's reliable and my information is always there. When we do content for our clients, we use a program called Gather Content that allows us to not only plan the content but create it in a way that the attorney has the ability to go in and view it, edit it, make comments. It tracks the changes and so forth. And so it really just depends. Like if you're a solo and you're going to be doing the content yourself, I think it's probably sufficient in most cases to use a word processor, whether it's Microsoft Word, Google Docs, or whatever. But then if you're going to collaborate with a bunch of people in your firm, say you've got a 10-person firm, something like Gather Content could work very well.
Okay. I also have a question here that I may be able to answer in part, and Dan, if you have any other insights to add to this, please go ahead. The question is, will content strategy or planning have to change with Google updates? I think that's a fantastic question. Short answer, I think, is that unless search engines drastically change their outlook on how they feel about providing, high-quality content to consumers, unlikely. Of course, I think the goal here is, not to engage in any sort of black hat practices. It's really a tortoise and the hare sort of game here, where slow and steady wins the race. Taking shortcuts to try to get to the quote unquote top of Google, not a great choice. And as Google gets smarter and smarter, that's going to be much harder to do. I know this year in 2016, we expect to see an update to Google's Penguin, which is expected to be a real-time update. As I said earlier in the presentation, Google's Penguin is designed at hunting down spammy links, that sort of thing. As a real-time function of Google now, we should expect to see that websites who are engaging in practices they shouldn't be maybe have their websites relegated to the bottom of the list here, and websites that are participating in the right sort of practices may see the rewards as this update comes out. That said, websites that also have problems that fix them may see sort of repairs to their rankings more quickly as a result. Dan, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty much, but I see so many attorneys get distracted by internet vendors trying to sell them shortcuts, SEO tricks, and so forth. And with each algorithm update, those tricks get less and less effective. And so, we've seen this happen over and over again, and it's very predictable. The money that you spend on SEO tricks today is money that will likely cause you suffering in the future, as Google discovers any tricks that they have implemented to the extent that they haven't already. And so it's a longer range proposition to look at content creation. It's not as conductive of instant gratification, but over the long run, it's so satisfying to see the content that you've created bringing in perpetual return on investment without ever costing anything. Again, it becomes a cost generator rather than a cost center in your business. And Google's business model hasn't changed in years in terms of content, and there's no reason why it would in the future. As far as we can see, these updates are all geared towards making the best content float to the top.
I have another Lawlytics related question. In terms of content planning, how much does it cost?
That depends on the individual basis. The typical content plan runs about $3,000. These are comprehensive plans. If you have multiple areas of practice, or it's a particularly ambitious plan nationwide, or to conquer a large populated state, it could be more than that, up to about $10,000, just depending. And what it does is it gives you a comprehensive roadmap with the milestones that then you can either follow yourself or engage us to do. So it's by no means a low end proposition. It's for firms that are really ready and willing to invest in building their future, and it's a really good tool for accountability internally.
How about this question as well? In terms of content planning, can we plan the content and then have a law clerk at a law firm write it?
Yes, and that's I think I kind of answered that in the last part. But yes, if you have us do it, that document is yours to do whatever you want with, and it takes a lot of supervision and understanding to have people create the content for you, and having a content plan like that as as a guide can really help as far as accountabilities. Then you'll be able to see if you do have a law clerk, for example, doing it. You'll be able to see how he or she is doing, what they've accomplished, and how it fits in. And once we've done that for you, if you're having somebody else do it, we're happy to do periodic check-ins with you to see how your team is doing as it's being created as well. I've seen a couple more questions pop up. One's come up a couple times, which is, can we get a copy of the slides? And yes, the slides and the video of this webinar will be available on demand. It'll probably be posted online sometime early next week, and we will either, if we can get to it tomorrow, we'll send it out in tomorrow's newsletter. If not, it will go out in an announcement sometime early next week. Oh, and I see another one that I'll just grab real quick. One of the questions is, will Google have issues finding the new .coms like .lawyer, .legal domains? So what this person is asking is about the new top-level domains such as .lawyer, .attorney, .law that are being sold to attorneys. And there's recently been an expansion of the availability of those top-level domains, and a lot of them are being marketed with what I see as a lot of hype. I don't think that there's any issue from our perspective of Google being able to see or find or index those. In fact, we do have some attorneys who have used .lawyer and .attorney names that are doing quite well with them on the Lawlytics system. That's anecdotal, but I would have to say that anecdotal evidence leads me to conclude that it's the content on the site rather than the top level domain that really matters. But if you're planning something big and long term, it's the content that matters more. We have attorneys that have done very well on .info sites as well, and it really depends on how what level of domain you could get. So for example, if you got the domain personalinjury.law, my guess is that would probably be pretty expensive to buy, but it would probably do pretty well. But if you got personal-injury-law-attorney-legal.law, it probably would not fare well. Hope that answers that. And I do have an article or two posted that I've written on the Lawlytics blog that addresses the issue of those new top-level domains as well.
I think I have one other question that's come up here. It looks like it's a question about content volume. How many pages should a good content plan provide for?
How many pages? Okay, I guess there's a couple ways of interpreting that question. How many pages should a content plan be, or how many pages should be in the website based on the content plan? Which way do you understand the question?
I think I understood it the first way.
So how many pages should a content plan be?
That's what I understand this question to mean.
I mean, it depends, and like ours turn out to be somewhere between 10 and probably an average of 10 and 20 when we create them for our clients. But if I were creating one for a practice that has multiple areas and wants to go really, really deep, the content plan could easily be 50 pages. There's no ruling that out. And of course that, you take font into account, you take spacing as well and how it's organized. But it's not something that you can or should scratch on the back of a napkin and hope to have guide your firm for the next year to 3 years. And just in terms of the other way that question might be interpreted, there's really no hard and fast rule to how many pages a website has, but on Lawlytics we have some websites that are really dominating on a state or a national level that we've watched grow, and there seems to be a direct correlation to the number of pages and word count on those pages to the success of the sites. Now, that being said, those sites also have what would be considered high quality content, information that is usable. In fact, some of them are used as research resources that law students and attorneys even look at. And so, if you're creating something like that, sky is really the limit. But then if your goal is not necessarily to create a dominant web presence in a state, but rather to be competitive and make a decent living in a, say, mid-sized city like Tucson, for example, you might get away with 50 to 100 pages of well-written content. But one of the things that we would do when we're doing the content planning is we would look at what other pages are ranking, what other sites are ranking, how much do they have, and so you want to examine what other people are doing as well, because the rankings or the placement in the search results for Google is a zero-sum game. They're not going to ever display more than about 10 of them, and sometimes a lot fewer than that. And so, if you have other firms that you're competing with that are doing better than you need to provide more and better information than them to ultimately be competitive.
Okay, well that sums it up on my end for questions that I see here. Are there any other questions that you wanted to address, Dan, before we close up the webinar?
I do see one other question here, and the question reads, does it provide value to create content in other languages? For example, if someone searches Google in Spanish, how valuable is it to have or I think what the question is saying, how valuable is it to work on creating Spanish content? And again, that's really, it's a business decision. And if you go back to the prioritizing the business processes slide that I had earlier, if you have a large potential client base that speaks Spanish, and you know that they are likely searching in Spanish, then by all means it makes sense to provide that Spanish language page or pages, even if they're not searching in Spanish, because there's not enough information out there given your jurisdiction to cause them to have a worthwhile search experience, so they're searching in English instead. If you provide the Spanish information on your website and they're more comfortable conversing in Spanish, and you also do in your practice, then it still makes sense to go ahead and translate those pages and have them there in Spanish as well, because it goes to the issue of, do you care? Do you care about them? Do you care about connecting with them as human beings? And so, Google's one thing, and yes, there's going to be an advantage if you provide the Spanish content if nobody else is, and people are actually searching for it. But there's also a real world advantage to it as well, and that really goes back to the client personas and the referral source personas that you're looking at building as part of creating the content plan. So, anybody else have any other questions? I'm going through these, make sure that we got everything. Okay, yeah, from what I see, it looks like we've addressed all the questions. We'll give it another couple seconds if anybody is typing anything now. And all right, well, so we are going to be announcing a roster of webinars starting in January, going through the first half of the year. So the first 6 months or so, where we're going to be doing 2 webinars like this per week. The webinars will typically be at the same time each week on 2 different days. And this will be in addition to our regular application training for Lawlytics. So if you are not subscribed to our newsletter, best way to get notified of these webinars when they happen is to subscribe to the newsletter, because we will always announce them. And then at the time of the webinar, once you've registered, if you can't attend, because we kind of just have to pick a time, given that we have customers in all time zones, including Hawaii and Alaska as well. So we kind of have to just take our best guess as to when most people can go. Everything will be available on demand within a week of the webinar. But if you sign up for the webinar, then we'll know to notify you when the webinar comes out and is available on demand. If you have questions, feel free to email us. If you're not a Lawlytics customer already, info@lawlytics.com is great if you have topics that you want to discuss or you have other questions from this webinar. If you are a Lawlytics customer, call us at any time, or you can call us if you're not a customer as well if you just want to talk, and also submit a support ticket, and we're happy to help you out with anything. I think you'll find the list of webinars that we're going to be doing, the first 50 of them or so, to be pretty comprehensive. But if there are topics once you see the list that we've missed and you'd like us to cover, just let us know and we'll put something extra together. With that, I'm going to officially end this. It looks like a couple more questions have come in though, so I'm going to, for those of you that want to stick around, I'll answer these as well. Okay, so the follow-up question to the Spanish question was, is it better to create entirely new pages or simply translate on the same page? I think in that example, it's going to be better to create an entirely new page. And in fact, we have customers who have basically bifurcated or even trifurcated their, if that's a word, their menus into various languages. Let's say let's say 75% of your clientele is English speaking and 25% is Spanish speaking. If you put the Spanish translation of the page on the English pages, it may have the unintended consequence of alienating the English speakers and vice versa. You'd have to pick which one to put first. If you have English first, it might not be as likely that the Spanish speakers are going to scroll all the way down to the Spanish content, and so it's just a better practice to separate them. I would suggest, and we've gone through this, we actually have provided translation services from English to Spanish before for customers who want to do this kind of translation and basically creating a parallel site. We recommend that you do not use an automated translation service. Like, for example, Google Translate will roughly translate the page, but the nuance of the language is such that it not only can cause confusion about what's actually being said, but I kind of worried when I saw some of the translations that it could create some ethical issues as well, by potentially butchering the law or making promises in a way that's misleading based on a failure to translate literally. So yeah, and in this case, I do believe that that additional pages would be better. Okay, well, with that, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you very much for attending. We're going to make an announcement of one additional webinar this year, which will be SEO trends to look for in 2016 and how to prepare for them, and then look for the list of upcoming webinars for the new year. Have a good day.